Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are doing something a little different.
Bit of a change of pace.
Yeah, exactly. Usually we take a specific trend, maybe a new piece of tech or a shifting market, and we zoom right in, we look at the pixels. But
And
today,
they were zooming out.
way out, we are looking at the very ground beneath our feet, at history itself.
It's a foundational session, really.
Mm-hmm.
We are essentially questioning the whole architecture of our reality.
Mm-hmm.
We're asking a question that sounds, it sounds simple on the surface, but it's actually quite vertigo-inducing.
What's the question?
Is the world we live in today, this unified, global, capitalist, nationalist society, was this the only way it could have turned out? Was it inevitable?
Exactly. And it starts with a feeling I think you've probably had. I mean, I woke up this morning, checked my smartphone, bought a coffee with a digital transaction that probably bounced off a satellite somewhere.
Sure.
And I walked through a city that operates on laws and schedules. It feels solid. It feels permanent. It feels like if you started humanity in a cave 50,000 years ago, this global civilization was always the finish line.
Right. It's like we were always destined to end up here in a skyscraper wearing denim.
Yeah.
And that feeling, that's what the source calls the illusion of inevitability. It acts as a kind of a psychological safety blanket for us. We crave order, so we like to believe there's a logical narrative arc to history that bends toward us, toward the present moment.
But the source material we are covering today, it's chapter 13 called The Secret of Success, along with this really haunting image from 1945. It's here to just rip that safety blanket right off.
It is. The core argument is unsettling, to say the least. It suggests that if you could rewind the tape of history 10,000 years and just hit play again, the world would probably look nothing like this.
We probably wouldn't be monotheists.
Probably not. We might not have nation-states. We almost certainly wouldn't be speaking English. And maybe the scariest part of all, we might not have the technology to destroy ourselves.
So we're going to explore three massive ideas today that really challenge those assumptions. First, this idea of the hindsight fallacy, why we're so terrible at understanding the past.
Then we'll get into chaos theory, specifically why it's basically impossible to predict the future.
And third, a concept that frankly creeped me out when I was reading the notes for this.
Cultural parasitism.
Yeah, the idea that our most deeply held beliefs might just be mental viruses using us as hosts to spread.
It is a heavy lineup, I'll admit. But the mission here isn't to be depressing or nihilistic. It's to understand that our world is, in many ways, an accident.
And that's empowering.
That's the key. Once you understand it's an accident, you realize it's not set in stone. It can be changed.
Okay, so let's start with the past. Segment 1, the hindsight fallacy. The source uses this fantastic metaphor of a crossroads to explain why we get history so wrong.
It's the essential visual to keep in your head for this entire conversation. Imagine every significant moment in history, not as a link in a chain, but as a fork in the road.
Okay.
Not just a simple left or right fork, but a junction with thousands of potential paths radiating outward into the fog of the future.
So at any given moment, say the morning of a battle or the day a king dies, or even just a random Tuesday, there are, theoretically, infinite futures available.
Exactly. But we, standing here in the present, we're looking backward. We can only see the one single path that was actually taken. We see the road traveled.
And because that's the only road we can see, our brains play a trick on us.
They do. We assume it was the only road available. We assume it was the widest, the smoothest, the most well-lit path.
We confuse what happened with what had to happen.
Precisely. The source compares it to watching a replay of a football game, where you already know the final score was 30-0.
I love this analogy because I fall for this all the time. I'm the classic Monday morning quarterback. If I know the Patriots won, every play they make looks like absolute genius.
Of course.
I'm watching the replay saying, oh, look at that pass. Clearly they had the superior strategy. Their victory was written in the stars.
But think about what it's like if you were on the sidelines, live, in the heat of the moment. Anything could happen. You saw the fumble that almost was. You saw the star receiver trip. You saw the chaotic bounce of the ball.
Right.
If you played that same game 10 times, the Patriots might lose 9 of them. But because we only have the one recording, we treat that one outcome as destiny.
We act like the referees rigged the game of history from the start. We look at the winners and say, well, obviously they won because they were better or smarter or stronger.
And the source provides a specific, really high-stakes case study to prove this point. The Roman Empire, around the year 306 AD, This is the ultimate what-if scenario.
Okay, set the scene for us. 306 AD. The Roman Empire is huge, it's powerful, but it's starting for a fracture.
It is a time of immense instability. You have civil wars, you have generals fighting for control, the borders are porous. And into this steps Emperor Constantine. He's a savvy politician, a brutal survivor, and he realizes that to hold this massive, diverse empire together, he needs a glue. He needs a unifying narrative, a national faith.
So he's effectively shopping for a state religion. He's looking for a spiritual banner to unite the legions and the provinces.
In a way, yes. Now, because we live in a world where Christianity won, we look back and we say, well, obviously he picked Christianity.
Of course.
It's the most logical choice. It offers salvation. It has a strong moral code, a clear hierarchy. It was inevitable.
That's the straight line we see in the rearview mirror. We think of Rome, and we immediately think of the Vatican. It's a straight line.
But if you were actually a Roman citizen in 306 AD, Christianity was just one stall in a very, very crowded religious marketplace. Now, frankly, it wasn't even the most popular stall.
It was sort of the weird, edgy one in the back.
That's a good way to put it. This is what surprised me when I first read about this period. I assumed Christianity was already this juggernaut.
Me too. So what else was on the menu? What were his other options?
Oh, the competition was fierce. You had Mithraism. This was massive among the Roman legions, the soldiers.
Yeah.
It was a cult of brotherhood, of strength, sacrifice. It had secret handshakes, levels of initiation. If you were a betting man in 306 AD, you would probably put your money on Mithraism becoming the state religion.
A religion of soldiers running a military empire. That makes total sense.
It makes perfect sense.
Why didn't they win?
We'll get to that mystery. But there were others. You had the cults of Isis and Cybele from Egypt and the Near East. These were ancient, mysterious, very popular with the aristocracy.
Right.
You had Zoroastrianism pressing in from the Persian borders. You had Judaism, which was well established, but tended to be more insular. You even had Buddhism trickling in via the trade routes. And then there was Manichaeism.
I have to admit, until I read this source, I had never heard the word Manichaeism.
And that proves the point perfectly.
Mm.
Today, Manichaeism is a footnote. It's a trivia answer. But in the 3rd and 4th centuries, it was a heavyweight contender.
Yep.
Absolutely. It was a dualistic religion, light versus dark, good versus evil.
Yeah.
Very compelling, very structured. It spread all the way from China to Rome. St. Augustine himself was a Manichaean before he converted to Christianity.
Wow. So if Constantine had woken up in a slightly different mood that day, or if a different advisor had whispered in his ear, we could be sitting here today in a Manichaean studio.
We might be. And here is the real kicker. If Manichaeism had won, we would be making the exact same arguments for it that we made for Christianity today.
Of course we would.
We say, well, obviously Manichaeism won. Its dualistic nature appeals to the human psyche. It explains the struggle of existence perfectly. It was destined to be.
So the million-dollar question, which the source tackles head-on, why Jesus? Why did Christianity beat out Mithraism or Manichaeism or any of the others?
And the source is brutally honest about this. Historians can describe how it happened. They can give you the dates, the Edict of Milan, the Council of Nicaea. They can trace the sequence of political maneuvers.
Okay.
But they cannot definitively explain why.
That's a crucial distinction, isn't it? The difference between description and causation.
It is everything.
Hmm.
People try to find causation. The source calls these just so stories. You see this all the time in, bad history books. Authors try to reduce history to biology or geography or economics.
Right, they try to make it a formula.
Exactly. They say, oh, monotheism is better suited for the geography of the Mediterranean. Or Christianity fit the economic model of the late empire.
It's determinism. They want to say X plus Y must equal Christianity.
But the source argues that's nonsense. The more you actually know about a historical period, the harder it is to explain why things happen one way and not another. It's usually the people with surface-level knowledge who are the most confident that things were inevitable.
And the actual experts.
They're the ones shrugging their shoulders and saying, it was a roll of the dice.
It's fascinating that the contemporaries, the people actually living through it, are usually the most clueless of all.
And the source gives a great modern comparison to drive this home. It says suggesting Christianity would take over Rome in 306 AD is like suggesting that in the year 2050, Hare Krishna will be the state religion of the United States.
That sounds completely absurd. If someone told me that in 30 years the president would be sworn in on the Bhagavad Gita and chanting Hare Krishna was mandated in public schools, I'd say they were delusional.
And yet, That is exactly how obscure and radical Christianity felt to the average Roman elite. Strange, unlikely things happen all the time in history. That's the iron rule the source mentions. What looks inevitable in hindsight was usually invisible at the time.
Which brings us right to segment 2. If history is just a series of unlikely accidents, that has a pretty terrifying implication for the future, doesn't it?
Because.
It means we really can't predict anything.
Short answer, no, we can't. And the source introduces chaos theory to explain why.
Now, I've heard of the butterfly effect, of course, but the source makes this distinction between two types of chaos, level 1 and level 2. I found this really, really helpful for understanding why some things are predictable and others aren't.
It's a vital framework. So let's break it down. Level 1 chaos is chaos that does not react to predictions about itself. The weather is the classic example.
Right. So if a meteorologist gets on TV and says there is a 100% chance of rain tomorrow, the clouds don't hear him.
They don't hear him.
They don't say, oh, he thinks it's going to rain, well, I'm going to stay sunny just to make him look bad.
Exactly. The weather is incredibly complex. It involves heat, pressure, moisture, millions of variables. But it has no consciousness. It doesn't care what we think.
So our predictions don't change it.
Right. And that means as our computers get better, we can get better at predicting it. The system stays static regardless of our forecast.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So what is level 2 chaos?
Level 2 chaos is chaos that reacts to predictions about it. And because it reacts, you can never predict it accurately. The system is listening to you.
And the source uses the stock market as the prime example here. Let's walk through that oil scenario because this kind of blew my mind a little.
Okay, so imagine we develop a super AI, a perfect economic predictor. It knows every variable in the global economy, every pipeline, every tanker, every geopolitical tension.
Everything.
And it predicts with 100% accuracy that the price of oil, which is $90 today, will hit $100 tomorrow.
Okay, so the computer spits out the ticket, oil is $100 tomorrow.
Now, what happens in the real world the second that information gets out?
Well, traders see an opportunity.
A huge arbitrage opportunity. If I can buy oil now at 90 and I know for a fact it will be 100 tomorrow, I make a guaranteed $10 profit per barrel.
So every trader on Wall Street hits the buy button at the exact same time.
Which causes a massive, instantaneous spike in demand. So the price of oil shoots up.
To $100 today, not tomorrow.
Exactly. The prediction falsified itself. Or, more accurately, it accelerated its own timeline and made itself incorrect about the timing.
And then what happens tomorrow? Who knows? Maybe the price crashes because everyone bought in early and now the market is totally saturated.
The point is, the prediction changed the behavior of the system you were trying to predict. You cannot predict the market because the market is made of people who are actively trying to beat the prediction.
And the source argues that politics and history are level 2 systems. They function just like the market.
Which brings us to the Mubarak algorithm. This is a fantastic thought experiment to illustrate why political pundits are almost always wrong.
Let's take you, the listener, back to 2010, Egypt. Hosni Mubarak is the president. He's been in power for decades. On the surface, it seems stable.
Now imagine a team of brilliant political scientists comes to Mubarak. They have a perfect revolution-predicting algorithm. They run all the data, food prices, youth unemployment, social media chatter, and they tell him, Mr. President, our model shows that in exactly 1 year, there will be a revolution in Egypt.
Okay, now Mubarak isn't a cloud. He's not level 1 chaos. He's a political survivor. He doesn't just sit there and wait for the rain.
He reacts immediately. He cuts taxes. He hands out billions of dollars in subsidies to buy the people's love. And just to be safe, he doubles the budget for the secret police and arrests all the opposition leaders before they can organize.
So he changes all the underlying conditions that led to the prediction in the first place?
Exactly. So the year passes, the people are placated with cash, the ringleaders are in jail, no revolution happens.
So Mubarak goes back to the scientists and screams, your machine is broken, you said revolution, and look, nothing happened. I want a refund.
But the scientists would say, Mr. President, the only reason the revolution didn't happen is because we predicted it.
Wow. It's a paradox, isn't it?
It is. If you can predict a revolution, you can prevent it. Therefore, a predictable revolution never happens.
This is why we are always blindsided.
Always. Think about the Bolshevik Revolution. In 1913, the Bolsheviks were a tiny radical faction. Lenin was essentially a nobody in the grand scheme of Russian politics. He was in exile.
A fringe character.
Totally. If you had told the Tsar in 1913, hey, watch out for that Lenin guy, he's going to take your throne and kill your family in 4 years, the Tsar would have crushed him. He would have sent a squad to Switzerland, and that would have been the end of the Soviet Union before it ever began.
The same logic applies to the Arab conquests in the 7th century, right?
Absolutely. In the year 600, the Arabs were disparate bands of desert tribes. The Byzantines and Persians were the global superpowers.
Right.
The idea that these tribes would unite and conquer everything from the Atlantic Ocean to India, it was preposterous. It would be like saying the Inuit are going to conquer North America next year.
It's unthinkable.
But it happened. If the Byzantine army had taken them seriously and won just one initial battle, Islam might have remained a small local cult.
It really highlights how we are balanced on a razor's edge constantly. It feels like we are walking a tightrope over a canyon of alternative histories.
And that leads to the most uncomfortable realization in this entire chapter. If history is just a series of accidents, accidental religions, accidental empires, accidental winners, does that mean the outcome is actually good?
Ah. This is segment 3, Blind Cleo. Cleo being the Greek muse of history, and the source is basically asking, is Cleo blind? Does she care about us at all?
And the answer the source gives is a resounding yes. She is blind. There is zero proof, absolutely none, that history works for the benefit of humans.
That is a hard pill to swallow. I think deep down, even if we aren't religious, we have this vague optimism. We think the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice.
We want to believe that.
Yeah, we assume the good ideas win eventually. We assume democracy won because it's better. We assume antibiotics exist because history wants us to be healthy.
That's selection bias. It's the victors writing the history books.
Yeah.
We define success in history purely as survival and spread. If a religion spreads to 1 billion people, we call it successful.
But does that mean those billion people are happier than they would have been otherwise?
We can't know. We assume so. We assume Christianity was better than Manichaeism, which is why it won. We assume capitalism is better than the alternatives because it's dominant.
But we have no objective happiness yardstick.
None at all. The only people who can tell us are the victors. Christians will tell you, yes, the world is better because we won. But if Manichaeism had won, Manichaeans would be sitting here saying, thank goodness we defeated those Christians. The world is so much better now.
So historical evolution isn't about quality of life for humans. It's just about replication.
And this brings us to memetics. This is where the biological analogy gets really dark, but it explains so much.
Cultural parasites. Okay, let's unpack this. We're talking about ideas behaving like viruses.
Right. Think about a biological virus like the flu or COVID. What is the evolutionary goal of a virus?
Right.
It has only one: to replicate, to make more copies of itself.
Okay, so does the virus care if the host, the human, is happy?
No.
Does it care if the host eventually dies?
Only if that death stops the spread. But if the virus can spread before the host dies, or even because the host dies, it doesn't care at all. It's indifferent.
Okay, I'm with you so far. So how does this apply to culture?
The source argues that cultures are mental structures made of memes, which are just units of cultural information. An idea like nationalism or chivalry or a specific religious doctrine. These ideas want to spread from mind to mind.
So the human brain is the host, and the idea is the parasite.
Yes. And just like a biological virus, a cultural parasite doesn't necessarily care about the well-being of the human host. In fact, some of the most successful ideas in history are successful precisely because they kill their hosts.
That sounds completely counterintuitive. How does killing the host help the idea spread? Usually if the host dies, the parasite dies with it.
In biology, yes, often. But in culture, death can be a marketing tool.
A marketing tool?
The source points to martyrdom. Think about a soldier dying for his country or a monk dying for his faith.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
If a human is willing to die for an abstract idea, like a Christian heaven or a communist paradise, that act of dying is incredibly powerful advertising. It impresses other people. It signals immense value.
They think, wow, he died for that cause. It must be true. It must be worth it.
Precisely. So the human dies, which is tragic for the human, but the idea, the meme, gets a huge credibility boost and spreads to 10 more people who watch the sacrifice.
The meme exploits the host to replicate itself.
Exactly. The source mentions that some postmodernist thinkers view nationalism this way. They call it a deadly plague.
And when you frame it like that, something like World War I looks very different. It wasn't really a strategic necessity for the people fighting it. It was millions of people infected by a nationalism virus that convinced them to march into trenches and shoot each other for the glory of the state.
It caused wars, genocide, hatred. From a human happiness perspective, nationalism has been a disaster for millions of individuals.
But from a mimetic perspective,
It's arguably the most successful virus in human history. It spread to every single corner of the globe.
because once one country catches the nationalism virus, its neighbors have to catch it too, just to defend themselves.
Exactly. You cannot be a peaceful tribe living next to a nationalist empire. You will be crushed. You have to become a nation state just to survive.
It forces replication.
It does. And that leads us to the other mechanism the source discusses, game theory, specifically the arms race.
This is the India versus Pakistan example. It's a perfect illustration of how a system can be rational for the meme, but completely irrational for the humans involved.
Right. So let's look at the dynamic. Pakistan buys advanced fighter jets. They do this because they feel threatened by their larger neighbor.
Okay, a rational move from their perspective.
Then India looks at that and says, wait a minute, we can't be defenseless, so India buys its own advanced fighter jets, maybe even more of them.
So then Pakistan feels even more threatened.
Then India says, you know what, we need a real deterrent, so India develops nuclear weapons.
And Pakistan looks at that and says, well, we absolutely cannot be bullied, so Pakistan develops nuclear weapons.
And the end result.
Well, now they are both armed to the teeth with world-ending weapons.
But are they any safer? The balance of power is roughly the same as it was at the very start. Neither side has a real strategic advantage. But now, billions and billions of dollars that could have been spent on education, hospitals, clean water, or food have been wasted on weapons.
So the individual humans in both countries are poorer and less healthy.
But the arms race meme is thriving. It successfully replicated itself from one government's budget to the other. It's a parasite that feeds on the resources of the country, gives nothing back but fear, yet it is almost impossible to stop once it starts.
It creates this trap where doing the rational thing for the nation state, which is buying weapons, is the completely irrational thing for the citizen who needs a hospital.
That is the tragedy of history, according to this source. The systems that win aren't necessarily the good ones. They're just the ones that are best at playing the game of replication.
This is getting pretty bleak, I have to be honest. We're accidental hosts to parasitic ideas that don't care about us, wandering through a chaotic timeline we can't predict.
It is bleak, but it's also clarifying. It strips away the myth that we are on some holy mission toward perfection. It reveals the machinery underneath it all.
Which brings us to perhaps the biggest accident of all, segment 4, the scientific revolution.
This is the hinge point. Around 1500 AD, history made a choice.
And again, the source emphasizes we don't really know why.
We really don't. Why did the scientific revolution begin in Western Europe? Europe was a backwater at the time. It was not the center of culture or power.
That was China, right? Or India, or the Ottoman Empire.
Exactly. Europe was recovering from plagues. It was fractured. It was dirty. It was not the obvious candidate.
So why not China? I mean, they had gunpowder, they had printing presses long before Europe did. Why didn't they cross the threshold into modern science first?
Scholars have written libraries of books on this. Was it the culture? Was it a lack of centralized control that allowed for more innovation? Was it just pure dumb luck? There's no consensus.
It wasn't inevitable.
Not at all. We can easily imagine a timeline where science, as we know it, physics, chemistry, modern medicine, started in Baghdad or Beijing 3 centuries earlier, or maybe a timeline where it never happened at all.
Imagine a world today that was still technologically stuck in the Middle Ages. No antibiotics, no electricity, no internet.
It's conceivable.
Yeah.
But the path that was taken led to a massive, unprecedented explosion of power. Science is unique because it connects knowledge directly to capability. It's not just thinking about the world, it's manipulating it. And that power culminated in the image we are looking at today.
Let's describe this image for you. It's black and white, it's grainy.
It shows a flat, featureless desert horizon.
Yeah.
And rising out of that horizon is that terrifying, iconic shape, the mushroom cloud.
The caption is so precise, it reads, Alamogordo, 16 July 1945, 05.29.53.
That precision is haunting, isn't it? 05.29 and 53 seconds.
This is 8 seconds after the detonation of the first atomic bomb, the Trinity test.
This moment represents the ultimate outcome of that accidental choice made back in 1500. The scientific revolution gave humanity the power to not just change history, but to end it.
There is a quote from Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the bomb, who was watching this happen, and it connects everything we've been talking about today.
He quoted the Bhagavad Gita, an ancient Hindu text. He said, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
It's just chilling. It connects this ultra-modern peak science moment right back to that ancient religious marketplace we started the whole conversation with.
And it perfectly encapsulates the chaos we talked about. A butterfly flaps its wings in Europe. In 1500, some monks start messing around with mechanics and optics. And 450 years later, a mushroom cloud rises over New Mexico, capable of destroying civilization.
If you had told a peasant in 1500 that his great-great-great-great-grandkids would have the power of the sun locked inside a bomb, he wouldn't just laugh. He wouldn't even have the concepts to understand what you were trying to say.
It just shows the sheer scale of the unpredictability. We're riding a tiger, we don't know where it came from, and we certainly don't know where it's going.
So this leads us to the final question, the outro. We've torn down the idea of destiny. We've exposed our beliefs as potential parasites. We've admitted we can't predict tomorrow. Why bother studying history at all?
It's the only question that matters now. If it's not a roadmap to the future, what is it?
And the source says it's not to predict the future.
No. We study history to widen our horizons, to understand that our current situation is accidental.
And that's a good thing, isn't it?
It's incredibly empowering. Think about it. If you believe that capitalism or racial hierarchies or the nation-state are natural and inevitable, like the laws of physics, then you feel helpless.
You can't change gravity.
You can't change gravity. You just have to live with it.
But if you realize they are just accidents, that they are just one path taken out of thousands of possibilities,
Then you realize they can be changed. They aren't solid. They are fluid. We made them so we can unmake them or remake them into something better.
that is a powerful shift in perspective. It turns history from a prison into a laboratory.
Exactly. We are in the lab. We can run new experiment. We don't have to keep running the nationalism program or the arms race program. If we realize they're just bad software that's crashing the system, we can try to code something new.
So studying history liberates us from the past.
It allows us to wake up from the nightmare of history, as James Joyce's character Stephen Dedalus said, and maybe start writing our own dream.
I love that. It takes all that randomness and chaos and turns it into opportunity. Now, before we go, we always like to leave you with a final, provocative thought, something to chew on.
I've been thinking about that level 2 chaos idea all week. The idea that predictions change the outcome.
Like the Mubarak prediction preventing the revolution.
Right. So consider this. If we, as a society, collectively study history and come to the conclusion that things like extreme nationalism or unchecked consumption are just mental parasites, that they're viruses that are using us for their own replication,
Okay.
does that very realization act as a prediction?
Oh, I see where you're going. By naming the virus? By seeing the code?
Yeah.
Do we kill it?
Exactly. If the nationalism virus relies on us believing that it's a wholly natural, inevitable duty, what happens when millions of us look in the mirror and say, oh, I'm just infected with a meme?
The spell breaks. The prediction that nationalism will continue to dominate becomes false because we finally understood the mechanism behind it.
Can diagnosing the virus cure the patient? That is the hope of studying history, that by seeing the strings, we can finally stop being puppets.
Wow, okay.
Oh.
That's a lot to process, but it gives me a reason to keep reading.
It's the best reason there is.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this. This was a true deep dive.
My pleasure. It was fascinating.
And to you, the learner, thanks for listening. Keep asking why. And remember, nothing is inevitable. See you next time.